Oh, hi there. Welcome to another episode of the Myths That Make Us podcast. Today we have on meditator, comedian, meat suit, Cory Allen. Cory, thank you for coming on. It was a pleasure. It was a blast. And it's been way too long since our last conversation. Congratulations on being one of the most successful people I've ever seen on social media. How do you do it? If you're watching this, text me. Tell me how you do it, because I don't know how you do it. Speaking of social media, are you addicted? How many times have you checked your social media today? If you're like me and you're addicted to social media and everyone you know is addicted and you kind of want to maybe do something about it, you should check out the sponsor of this podcast, which is the sponsor of every episode we'll ever do, and it's called the Dharma Artist Collective. You can go ahead and get a week-long free trial and come join us on a Dharma sprint and maybe begin to reclaim your attention. Without further ado, here is Cory Allen on the Myths That Make Us podcast. Cory, it is so good to see you again. It has been way too long, and so just thank you for reaching out and thank you for coming on the podcast.
I don't remember reaching out. No, thank you so much for having me, man. It's so great to see you, and I honestly don't know why we haven't seen each other for so long. I think we've just been in our own worlds, doing our own things. But I'm so happy to be here with you, man.
Likewise. I don't know if you remember, but the first time we talked, it was online, and it was because I think I had seen you post something about Robert Anton Wilson. And you shared with me that you had actually had a relationship with him. Mm-hmm. So let's just revivify that memory for me, because I thought that was the coolest thing I'd ever heard anyone ever say.
Yeah, man. So I became fascinated with his work whenever I was a teenager. I think like a lot of people. I started off reading Western philosophy and then moved to Eastern wisdom traditions. And then as I was wearing both of those things out, I began to find the kind of hippie philosophers like Terence McKenna and stuff like that. I found Robert Anton Wilson, specifically the book Prometheus Rising, which I read. And I thought it was really useful in doing something that isn't talked about enough, but I think is really the most important skill I've learned out of anything I've ever taken in. And that is that your perception is subjective. That's really the core teaching in that book.
Yeah.
And once you learn that, it changes everything. And we could talk about that later. But as a wisdom ravenous type of person,
yeah,
I went and of course read all of his books. And so at that time, I then discovered that they were creating a documentary about him. And there was something, I don't know if Kickstarter existed at that time, but it was something like that. And if you contributed X amount of dollars, you got a DVD, and you also had access to a premiere of the doc in Santa Cruz where Bob lived. Wow. And so I was 20 or almost 21 at the time. By the time the doc came out, docs go, I was 21. I went by myself to Santa Cruz and went to the premiere.
From where? Where were you coming
from? Austin. Well, it's been in Austin. And so I met him there afterwards. That's where that picture of us is from. And so then we chatted a little bit, which was great. And then afterwards, I saw that in that ecosystem is being built because he was aging and was having a hard time traveling, and he saw a lot of bills. He couldn't really go around and do his talks anymore. And so he thought, well, as the innovator that he always was, futurist, he was like, why can't we do this online? And so this is over 20 years ago. This is 2003.
Wow.
And he was like, let me do a live course online called the Maybe Logic Academy. And so I saw that, and he had his friends come in and also do some courses, like Are You Serious did one. I think Nick Herbert did one. the guy that wrote Quantum Reality, speaking of old hippie books, which I met him. I went to Robert Anton Wilson's funeral and I met Nick Herbert there. And
the crew that must have gathered for that.
It was quite great. Yeah, I saw them pour his ashes into Monterey Bay.
Wow.
Anyway, so through that course, you could then, you chat with him live. And so we just, cool. Yes, it's pretty trippy to think about. And so we spent a lot of time, just like weeks and weeks and weeks, together, and he would talk about ideas and share stuff, and you could ask questions, and then we would just have one-on-one chats. Wow. And then after that, I just stayed connected to him and kind of the people that were working with him. And I just offered being helpful in any way I could. And so I helped transcribe these hours of interviews that he had done that were unreleased, that they were going to turn into his next book. But unfortunately, he died before that happened.
Wow. There's so much there. Like, I really credit Prometheus Rising as like saving me from a psychosis that I was in, that I was doing everything I can not to trip the tripwires of our culture that would then, put me into a mental hospital. Like what you called like the subjectivity of our perception. I remember him calling it model agnosticism, and that was just so fucking helpful for me. I'm curious, who were the Western philosophers when you were tearing through that like stood out to you, that you resonated with?
Number one was Nietzsche, of course.
Same.
Yeah, he was everything I wanted to hear,
That is such a good way to put it. God damn, that's funny.
And especially for young men, it's like, oh, I am a inevitable like being of power and wisdom that can slash everything, and if anyone questions it, then they're the problem. Like, oh, perfect.
That's so funny.
Yeah, so definitely Nietzsche was the man. And then I got into Husserl and people like Merleau-Ponty and kind of people that were on the phenomenology.
Yeah.
And about, I've got into everything, but Nietzsche was definitely number one.
And then when you got into the Eastern stuff, was there a specific either lineage or teacher, or was it more than just, Nietzsche?
Yeah, so the first book I recall picking up, I think, if memory serves, that Schopenhauer talked about some Eastern wisdom in his books, and that made me think, that seems pretty interesting. And so I went over into a bookstore. This is back, in the old days, when you just go into a bookstore, and it's just like record shopping. It's like you could dig through like crates of records, and there's like, if you do it enough, there's this language of like vibe. This is vibe language where you're like, you've never heard of this before, you've never seen this record, but you're like, this is something. I know this is something. I'm going to get this, and that 9 times out of 10, it's something that's crazy. There's just like this like math. I don't know. I don't even know how to explain it, but I think that books are the same way, and especially wisdom books. And so I was doing that, crate digging, but with Eastern wisdom books. And I was like, I found this book that was D.T. Suzuki, Essays in Zen Buddhism, and picked that guy. And yeah, it was fantastic. It was like, because this is, again, before it was, here's the top 10 actionable ways to do this and this. Here's how to meditate for better business strategy. It was none of that shit. It was just like, here are long translated from, Japanese. He was the first person. He was very important to translate ideogrammic, wisdom, things written only in Japanese to English, to alphabetic language.
So is he doing the translating?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, he's the man. Yeah, he's a very, very important figure. Also, I believe like Alan Watts was like a huge fan of his as well. Whenever there, actually spent some time with him. But incredible guy. And his focus, of course, was on Zen Buddhism, which is sort of the last in the lineage of all of the wisdom trickling down, and finally making it to Japan. But that book was just like long paragraphs of abstract essays. But that's, that's what I like. And so I would just read it over and over and over again until it made sense. And it really was clicking. And I think that the important thing, especially with, the description of Nietzsche, is it's like, one of the reasons why Nietzsche hit me so hard was because the first time I looked at it, I thought, wow, this is how I think. It's not necessarily what I think, but it's just sort of the math of how my mind works. Taking abstract, larger ideas and things and breaking them down into distilled, sharp kind of weapons and tools that you can use in life. And so whenever I first started reading that book by Suzuki, I was like, this is how I think and what I think. This is underneath all of my anger and sadness and frustration and like cosmic weight that I had at the time. The fire that led me and drove me to do all the stuff I've done up until today that kept me from, I had a rough upbringing, and friends that have known me for a lot of my life, they're like, I don't know how you're not a drug addict. Like, how are you not, like, how are you? And I'm like, flip the coin, man. I just got lucky, or it was meant to be, or, I have a good sniffer, I was able to sniff out the right paths. But I think that honestly, jokes aside, what it is that underneath all of that pain and anger and disappointment that I had, there was just this feeling of compassion and an understanding and empathy of people and myself that was way stronger. And that's really where the fire was. That's where the heat was coming through. As it went outward, it happened to activate the other stuff, the bad stuff. But that was the source of it all. And so whenever I started reading that stuff, I thought, okay, this is how I'm going to be able to clear away and let go all of the shit that's holding me down, that's making me an asshole, that's making me miserable, that's making me limit myself and hate myself and all this. And I can use this raw vitality and energy that I can feel as a being in service of just the compassion and the wholesome part instead of all the other stuff. And that's why I took a right turn into that school of philosophy.
That is beautiful. And I really deeply resonate with the imagery of like the core tone is one of actually compassion, but then it hits all this residue that gets calcified like further out from the core that then like sings the song of like rage and contempt and shame. You mentioned something that really stands out to me, but that when you were reading this, what at first was abstract, you just kept rereading it with just the understanding that eventually you would get it.
Yeah.
Where do you think, I'm just curious, where did you first learn? Because what I'm hearing in that is like, that's the belief that I can learn anything that someone else has tried to express. Like, can you pinpoint when you recognized that belief, like in yourself? Because a lot of people I know don't have that belief even now, where they're like, if I don't get it at first glance, it's because I can't, But I think that,
I do. So I growing up, I had an interesting combination, which was high self-confidence and low self-worth. And how you get that is by growing up in a situation where you have to be hyper vigilant, hyper independent, and know, what I learned at a very young age through experiences with my family was that I'm going to have to be the one that shows myself the world, that takes care of me, and that I am my only source of unconditional love and possibility. Fortunately, I'm also a really curious person. And so that confidence or that patience, I think it's both, to understand things came from that, because from a young age, I was just always figuring out a lot of things in life that people didn't need to or weren't forced to figure out. All of the stuff I figured out was protection mechanisms. It's like, that's why I learned, and that's why the idea about, Robert Anton Wilson talking about perception being subjective, why it was so huge for me is because it was validating. It gave me permission to go, yes, like I know that's right. I know, and this is confirmed that this is what I knew was so important, because I lived with a lot of emotional manipulation, a lot of intellectual manipulation. I am hesitant to use the word gaslighting because it's become such a kind of a cultural, weird, slippery thing, but being told various versions of reality that I observingly knew weren't true, and then having those weaponized against me from very young. And so I had to start sorting out perception and what I saw and observed and how other people observed the same events, and then the stories they told about those events and how those stories changed over time to benefit them and to leverage against other people. And so I had to like figure out how to sort all of that stuff out. And because of that, I think it just made me confident because like I had to do it. I didn't have a choice. And so I was kind of trial by fire. I learned how to do it, learned how to figure things out with the mind. And then that curiosity part made it to where like each time that I understood myself more, each time that I saw, like observed my mind from within, each time I noticed how when I slowed down and paused in the moment and noticed what was arising in my mind and then chose what to say, chose how am I going to try to make this, how do I want this, make this person feel? How is what I'm going to say going to like land and influence them? And is it what I really mean? And do I believe it? Instead of just being on autopilot and in reactive mode and, scarcity mode all the time, survival. And every time I did that, I noticed I feel lighter. I feel better. I feel more awake. I feel like me. I feel like I'm in control of my own life, right? And so fortunately, my curiosity linked into that stuff because I was like, how far can this go? And I decided to find out.
I'm curious when you first had that, like, what cognitive science would call a metacognitive moment. Because when I look back on my life, I genuinely don't think I had my first, like, step behind the automation and, like, make a choice until I was, like, 19, and it was because of drugs. Like, I really looked at my early life, and I'm like, I really don't think I had a single moment that I can at least remember, and that for sure meets like the criteria of the like, oh fuck, there's something happening behind the thing I thought was the main thing the whole time. And so I'm curious what your first experience with that was.
Yeah, well, first I'd say, man, 19 is still really young. That's really good that, you had it at that point. That's huge. It's something to be proud of and to feel good about for sure, man. I mean, most people live their entire lives without ever having that moment. And the fact that you had it, before you're even 20 is really impressive. And it speaks to your own natural abilities and your curiosity and your willingness to see yourself clearly, and that's an incredible thing. It really is, man.
I appreciate it.
I think that maybe my first moment of that was really young. Like, I mean, probably whenever I was a kid. I was like a little kid. I remember just like this is I'm a weird guy, okay?
Yeah, me too.
So one of the things that I remember as a little kid was I would lay in my bed and I would look down, like if you're laying down and you tilt your head and you look at the wall, I'd be like, wait, what if I'm stuck to the wall right now and that's the floor?
That's cool, yeah.
Or what, and I'd like just kind of play with stuff like that. And I'd really try and sit and put my mind and like to believe it, be like, okay, I'm stuck to the wall and that's holy shit. How am I doing this? This is crazy.
That's cool.
And so as like, I would do little mind experiments like that with myself. And I remember noticing kind of the stage direction of those things that was happening in the moment. It's like, why am I thinking about this? And they're like, well, why am I thinking about thinking?
Wow.
And then I'm being like, who is thinking the thinking stuff?
The fact you had that as a kid is wild. Yeah. Cause I remember how disorienting it was to have that first, like, when you take a camcorder that's like producing a live feed and then you point it at the TV screen and it creates that infinite hall of mirrors.
Yeah, the Namjoon Paik Buddha sculpture. Love that. Yeah.
I remember the first time I had that, like, what's the thing behind the thing making the thing? And it was so disorienting. But it sounds like when you first started to do this, it was kind of like a sense of play.
It was play, and it was also like, yeah, of course. Like this, that makes it just made sense, you know.
Wow.
I guess it just felt really natural.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and again, I suppose one thing that has always been a pattern for me is discovering those little nooks and crannies of consciousness and then immediately like flipping the metaprogrammer switch and putting it into action.
Mm.
And that's why if you look at my writing, you know, any of the stuff I've done, it's all leading towards action. And I think that
Right,
just,
God.
it follows.
God.
You don't want to just hang out and get soupy for a while and get just kind of swish around in some nonsense. Come on, Eric.
Every, like, you know, like there's a moment when the hands start to prune and it's like, once the hands start to prune, let's go take some action. And it's the people who, like, I'm currently reading a book. I won't say the title yet until I get through it because I don't want to, you know, just shit on it until I've gotten to the end. But it's like 100 pages of like, my hands are pruned.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, but yeah, so I do appreciate the space between the idea and the action and your work and your riffs.
It sounds like, thanks. That sounds like that person should have written an autobiography, not a self-help book or something. What do you think?
Okay, so one of the things I remember you telling me that really stood out to me was that you were like in your early 20s, and I'd like to link this to like, was this the Western philosophy phase, the Eastern philosophy, or like post Robert Anton Wilson, but that you were experimenting with like darkness retreats and sensory deprivation tanks with like your motherfucking bathtub and your bathroom. Like, where do we locate that in the current like early 20s?
Yeah, I was doing that like late teens and then into my early 20s. And so, yeah, I would, because I'd read about, since I was into the hippie philosophers, of course, I came across John Lilly. And so I read about flotation tanks. And, you know, at that age, of course, I was doing psychedelics as well. And I was like, might as well put those two things together. And I was meditating, you know. And the goal was always to just like, how can I explore my mind as much as possible? And not in a, not even in a metaphysical way at all, really. It's like, I'm really curious, like, what's in there? Like, what is the material of consciousness? And what does that mean for my sense of selfhood and how like other people's consciousness exists? And like, what is this? Because and it's still, I think, one of the big questions that I think about all the time, just because, I mean, there's no answer, but it's just fun. But it's just like it's so weird to just be conscious. Like every single day I'm sitting, you know, at my desk and I'm like looking out the window and I'm like, how am I just like aware? Like, this is so weird to be aware.
Yeah.
And like other people are also seem to be aware, I suppose, you know, like I can't really verify that they're not just like weird NPCs in my own, like I'm in some like matrix jail and this is like some software program, like 3-body problem that I'm trying to solve or something. But, you know, they seem to respond as if they're organic matter. But like, yeah, but that,
I could feel that you could have taken that riff further and further.
Of course. But, yeah, I really wanted to just kind of understand that, but it's all like services me trying to understand myself. And really, like, I didn't even get this until I was in my 30s, is that like, really all of that was me trying to find a way to kind of outthink my suffering and my pain and all of like the walls and the kind of emotional repression or just straight disconnection that I had. And so I kind of tried to, if you need to do some plumbing work, instead of going out to the street and going to the source, I was like, let's go in through the kitchen sink,
Right.
and make it really interesting and difficult, and take way longer. But yeah, just to kind of get to the fun stuff. So yeah, I would like I would go and meditate in the closet. I would go in the closet and put a towel under the door. And then I'd meditate in darkness for like 3 or 4 hours at a time. Sometimes I'd take mushrooms or something and do that. And I would just do it all the time, just like, I don't know, several times a week.
Wow.
And also, that was at the same time where I was meditating while staring at a candle flame for like 2 hours straight, which is always a good time. I would, then with the float tanks, I would get in the bathtub in the apartment I was living in. We had infinite hot water, not infinite, but a lot of hot water. had enough to, had enough to service my needs and the needs of the other people that live there. That would be weird if this one shitty apartment up in North Austin had infinite water. So,
the new Shangri-La.
yeah, just put this on oil tankers and send it over to struggling countries. But no, I would like the stopper. I would jam it with like a pen or like something to get it towards halfway up and halfway down of the tub, and then I would turn the water on and find the right tempo of water so that it was constantly pouring in and draining out at the same rate, so that the water never rose or fell. And then I would get in there, and I would get a washcloth. This is where I was going hardcore with it. I would get a washcloth and get it wet, and I would put it over my face. So not only did it hold my eyes closed, but it was like it kept my breathing from. I had to think about breathing through a wet washcloth. It's almost kind of like being waterboarded. Like you can barely breathe. But I was like, I want to slow my breath down so much that it's like artificially slow. Like you couldn't do it because you'd have a response, like a survival response. You'd kind of, I just like sit there. So I would do that all the time, like every night for months, and do it all the time for years. I would take substances to mess with my brain and get in there, and a lot of fascinating experiences. Like it really was a good way, and I don't recommend anyone doing it per se. There are better modalities now that are more easy and safer, but it really gave me the space to investigate my mind in a way that I hadn't really had before. And there was also, I did pass out a couple of times, and then my foot accidentally hit the stopper, and I flooded my apartment a few times.
Oh man!
Yeah,
did you have roommates?
No, I didn't have any roommates.
Wow.
So I would just wake up and
that is terrifying.
And I'd step out of the tub, and it'd be like sploosh, like the floor had like an inch of water. And so I'd call the service guy at the apartment and be like, "Hey man, I think the dishwasher backed up again." And he'd come over and he'd check it out. He's like, "Yeah, it's weird that like all the water is in the living room.
Only in the bathroom." Oh yeah.
Yeah, the bathroom, but in the living room, but not in the kitchen. But it's probably just like going under the counter or something. It's gotta get the fans again.
Man, right. So there's quite a few questions that come up when I feel into that. But the two like most interesting to me personally, and this is my motherfucking podcast, so I'm gonna ask the questions I want to ask.
You just do what you want to do.
First one is what was like the story or like the myth you were in when you were in this very intense period of meditation? Like for me, when I had my most intense period of like exploring psychedelics, I kind of like saw myself as like a spiritual apprentice to Sasha Shulgin, and like I was trying to like do the trip reports and like write him as like that wasn't explicit, but it was kind of like the ghost of the form, and I felt like I was being like a journalist. Did you have like a story that you were in for like why you were going so fucking hard in the paint? And then the sub question is, when you were exploring in that phase, did you have like a strong confrontation with the sincere contending with solipsism, like the joke that you were making, because I remember that being a part of my journey that was particularly rough, is when like I wasn't able, with my adherence or my admiration of skepticism, I like couldn't like integrate that until I found Robert Anton Wilson. And so those are kind of the two questions that I'm most interested in.
Yeah. I think the story I was in at the time was that I had some ability to access a type of, like, I'll just call it dharmic wisdom, and that there was a perennial flow of that inside of me for some reason that I couldn't understand. But I believed it was in there, and I wanted to get it out. And I don't mean get it out in terms of, I don't mean remove it. I mean, I want it to explode. Because I thought that the stronger that your mind was and the more enlightened you were, that ultimately, well, what I thought at the time was that I wanted to be this enlightened, amazing person, and then I could be kind of aspirational, like the people I looked up to that wrote incredible things about consciousness and human experience. What was really going on was that I was, focusing on the intellect really hard so that I could deny not having any emotional awareness or connectivity and suffering through like immense emotional oppression. And also like a horrible sense of self-worth. And so I thought, I'm gonna make myself so valuable through gaining wisdom that I'll become undeniable. And people will like me because I'll then do, and I think there's a lot of meat on the bone here, so I'm going to share this little tendril with you.
Yeah.
It's an interesting path whenever you walk that path. I think maybe you've done some of that as well.
For sure.
And what I realized last week, what I realized years later, I mean, over a decade later, was I started to ask myself, why do I feel isolated? Even though I know a million people, I know incredible, successful, kind, brilliant humans. I'm well liked, I think, by people. Whenever I go whenever I'm in social situations, the camera and the attention generally kind of comes on to me. I will entertain a little bit. I will have fun. I'll get locked into a conversation with a stranger that is deep and rich, and the whole time they are completely invested in what I'm talking about, and I'm invested in their mind. And I thought, well, all of these things, I seem successful and well-liked and charismatic. Why do I feel so isolated? Goes right back to what we were talking about, is trying to gain your self-worth through making yourself undeniably excellent in as many ways as you are capable of doing so. So it's like, look at my story. It's like, oh, well, I was a successful record producer and then a podcaster and then, and then I'm an advisor and an author and all this, like, and also I really like cooking and I play 10 games of chess a day and I know the Pali Canon really well. It's like, it's like just doing every little like move I could do to have like, look, I'm a Renaissance man of shit, that I've come up with that is entertaining and interesting. And it's like, well, I was just like, all that stuff was fascinating to me and it was a part of my own personal journey. But there was the part of me that was locked in the story of going, I'm not realizing, but I'm doing this because I'm trying to like feel like I'm valuable enough. And I want to be able to connect that sense of like really painful self, like loneliness, emptiness, emotional loneliness and suffering with the other part of me that is this joyful, playful, confident, and really caring dude. And I realized that like, why am I feeling isolated? And it's like, oh, well, because I took that path, what happened was that I created this, and this even meditation even goes into this. And so is mindfulness, which is really interesting. I created this masterful ecosystem that I am in control of. So whenever I am in a social situation and people are laughing and I'm keeping people, they're entertained, or I'm having a really rich conversation with them, sure, that's fun. But what's really going on is that I have subconsciously curated the situation to where everyone is kind of showing me a little bit of love, which I needed. People's attention around me is on me, so I'm not going to get surprised by anything.
That's fascinating.
And I can be outputting so that they're receiving, and so that I never have to actually share anything real. I can manage how I'm being perceived in every moment. I can be mindful and watch what I'm saying when I'm saying it, so that I know just exactly how it's going to land with a person, so that they won't see me in a way that I don't want them to see me. And so that once again, I can protect the image I've created and keep from having that real painful, wounded part of myself seen, because I want to be presented as being confident and strong, and this guy that everyone thinks like, well, he has it all figured out and he can do anything and whatever other things like that. And it's like, well, why do you get in one-on-one deep conversation with people? It's like, well, it's because I'm just using everything I've learned about consciousness to see exactly where their mind is going, so I can keep them entertained, give them this rich, fulfilled experience of having conscious awareness expand for them. And then them going, you're one of the most interesting people I've ever talked to. And I'm like, oh, that's nice of you. And it's like, well, yeah, I know. I programmed the whole thing so that I could kind of run my system that I used on myself on you to help you understand stuff, but most importantly, keep you from actually seeing me in a way I don't want you to, or touching something in me that is too vulnerable. I realized like all of that stuff, that whole thing was just this weird byproduct of my internal journey that I created without realizing it. So all that stuff I was just talking about, I didn't do all that intentionally. I thought that I was like broadening, expanding my consciousness and learning more about myself and trying to become the most enlightened version of me that I could be. And I was, but a part of my mind that I wasn't aware of was doing all that other stuff. It's like the dark side, the underbelly of my brain. It was like, this is all really useful material. You know, let's create this whole thing. Yeah. And that's whenever I realized that like I have to collapse the wall between those two worlds. And I know this is going on for a while, so I apologize.
No, I love this. Please continue.
I just think you in particular would really enjoy the
Bro, it's like, hello, mirror.
And I do see the irony in me saying all the stuff I'm saying. I'm like, let me talk for 15 minutes.
No, but the genuine question that comes up, because this is incredibly poignant, I think, especially for the type of people who resonate with my, how I share, because what you just articulated is almost like the glove fit.
Yeah.
I'm not acquitted. So I'm curious, you said that just a couple of years ago, you really had this insight. What was the new action that you started to take to start to collapse the two parts of you?
So like always, I started doing some experiments. I mean, first, of course, like recognizing and confronting the truth of where I was is, and I think anyone listening, like, just get clear on reality, on like what you're feeling, what you're aware that your walls, your barriers are, the games you're playing with yourself, the truths that you know that you're not allowing yourself to see, or that you're not taking responsibility for, or validating in a way. We can feel that stuff in our nervous system and our stomach. Whenever we start playing that game, you're going to feel a little anxiety. You're going to feel a heaviness. You're going to feel like a little just kind of uneasy. And that is the body going, this is not an aligned action, and not an aligned form of who I authentically am. So the me that's coming out is not, it's coming out in like in the wrong shape, I suppose. And we can feel when that's happening. And so I, acknowledged it at first. And I thought, well, I think that my like supreme confidence, I should probably start poking at. And at the time, for example, like anytime that I'm out and about, I would, and this is past tense, fortunately, but I would definitely walk with a lot of, well, I'm a very slow moving person in general. I'm like a marble statue that's come to life, and some of that is, this is like more interesting territories. Like some of that is because I've meditated for 25 years and I've spent a lot of time intentionally like slowing down and getting out, into parasympathetic mode. But also some of it comes from having to be, like a little gray rock, like for stoicism as a kid, to whenever someone is coming at you with emotional manipulation or conflict, not responding or not showing any of your feelings is how you take away the strength of someone that's trying to get a rile out of you to control you. And so some of that deadpanness that I have, I think came from, it's a defense mechanism. I would say that internally, when I was younger, I would seem deadpan like that, but I would feel really anxious or angry or scared inside. Now, because of the work, I may look deadpan and also feel deadpan inside. Very, very, very calm. And it's what you're seeing is what you're getting with me now, but I started messing with that confidence because it would be out in the world. I'd definitely be like very slow and, like purposeful, but also broadcasting this, like, I am kind of the sun type of energy, Yeah. And, we're both tall, and, if you're a tall person too, you get a little bit of extra give in the world. And I'm not, it just is what it is. Yeah. So it's like, I thought, okay, so I'm like a tall guy that's bald, and I'm walking around like with this like this kind of superpower confidence thing, Superman vibe. I thought, what am I doing? Why do I exist like that? Doesn't make any sense. It's like pure armor. It's ridiculous. And I would think like, how do I want people to receive me? Do I want a stranger to see me and be like, wow, that guy looks badass? That's ridiculous. Or do I want them to see me and be like, I better get out of that guy's way? Of course not. I want someone to see me and go like, that guy makes me feel calm and he feels warm. I'm like, walking around like that is not giving that vibe. And so I actually did some experiments where I thought, let me, for like a week, anytime I'm in public, I'm actually going to like roll my shoulders a little bit and sort of keep my head down and intentionally walk with less certainty. And then I'm going to try it the other way of maximum,
maxing.
Yeah. And just like, I wanted to see how the world treated me differently. And it was really interesting to see kind of the energy of how people would treat me differently. But yeah, so I started messing basically with that. And I realized like, that's just a weird veneer that I never really noticed before, like it was just kind of how I existed. And like letting that armor go, it was really important, starting to let go of the confidence armor. And then what I did was I was like, I need to get that emotional part connected to, the fun sort of outward Cory part. and I don't mix those two worlds. And so what happened is like I had really just lost connection with what like my emotional self, because I spent so long, like my entire life, just in the mind. You know, I would feel a thing or two, but I just didn't have the emotional intelligence, and I couldn't hear my own emotional arising. And so what I did was I meditated on this, and I thought, what do I feel whenever the emotions that can arise or might arise, whenever they're there? But I feel like there's an armor plate over my stomach. So I thought, okay, let me meditate on that. And I would sit and meditate and just go into my mind, go into my body. I thought, let me feel that feeling. So, okay, I can feel the tension in that plate on the stomach. Now let me go back in memory and just feel into it and go, when was the first time I felt that? And it was whenever I was a little kid. This memory just went, it was whenever I was a little kid. And I remember the first time I expressed genuine emotion, and a parent attacked me because of it. And I remember feeling really betrayed. And I remember feeling like that's whenever part of my worldview crystallized. Because I went, the person who I should have unconditional love with, the person I should trust, the person who is an authority figure. Yeah. They betrayed me. They made it to where I couldn't trust what was supposed to be the most good thing in life. And that's whenever a lot of the hypervigilance kicked on. That's when that's whenever the emotional shutdown happened. And I literally just sat there and like said to myself and said to that, and I'm not like this type of guy. I don't operate like this.
For sure. Yeah.
But I said to that in my mind, that armor on the stomach, I was like, you did your job. Like, I needed you then to protect me from more pain. I'm a grown man now. I don't need you anymore. So thank you. And you can go. And I just kind of visualized this armor like arising out of my stomach, out of the top of my head, and then turning into kind of ash and dust. I thought, okay, the next move is now.
Was there any purging emotion, like either tears or like coughing or anything somatic, like a trembling with the plate
There was
transforming to ash?
I don't know if you ever experienced this in meditation. I've never really known how to describe this. It's like a pulsation. Do you ever feel that? Like if you really get locked into a deep meditation, it's almost like you feel like your body is doing this, but like you're not moving, but you feel like you're doing this. It's like a kind of cosmic throb.
Yeah. So the thing, at least for me, is I don't like. It's very rare for me to like feel the pulse somatically, but when I get particularly deep, I'll see the pulse as like it starts in my periphery. My eyes are closed, and it goes. It's like woof,
Okay.
woof. You know, and it's more of like a visual thing. So you had like a pulse.
I have a physical one whenever I'm in deep meditation, like the body feels like it's like pulsating. So I had that, but it was huge. It was like massive, deep pulsation waves. Yeah.
Okay.
So whatever those guys are, they were there and they were dialed up. Yeah. And so after that, I decided that like I need to slow down and make space for what I'm feeling in those moments. Like whenever I do feel things, I need to give them the space because I need to find my way back to them and they need to find their way to me. And so whenever I would feel something, I would stop and I treat it like wine notes, like wine tasting. I'd be, okay, I don't know what this is, but I feel a little frustration, a little sadness, a little anger, a little excitement. And I would just like, okay, now that I've put labels around some of these distinguishing factors of this, how do those things fit together? Like, what does that sort of mean to feel all those things? And can I remember or think of and be honest with myself enough to go, what triggered that? And then if I start to do that, I can go, okay, well, this person said this thing and it made that feeling rise. That's why I'm feeling all of these things. And now I can like sit with that and understand that that's what it is. And after I begin to reconnect that tissue of my emotional awareness, I then thought, well, I need to start learning how to externalize these things, you know? And so what I call this is like emotional microdosing. So it's like, instead of going like the first time that, you know, you're with, let's say, well, I started to say your dad, but that's not a good example for either of us. Let's say, let's try again. Let's say with a male friend that you're just homies with, and, you know, saying like, some friends of mine would say, I love you very easily. Some friends of mine that are my best friends of 20 years have never said it to me, but I know they feel it, but it's just like, it's not the thing, right? So I think like, all right, so I'm not going to immediately go like, oh man, I love you. I'm so grateful to have you as a friend. And he's like, dude, we're just grabbing a beer. What are you doing? I was like, no, but listen to 4 hours of like, this has been building up, you know? So that's not,
I love you too.
yeah, that's not the right, that's not how, you know, when we spend a lot of time with repressed emotions or thoughts, once those things find some serviceable space and you feel ready to externalize them, many people are eager to do that all at once because their awareness is expanded and they see just how much is in there, and they go, oh, wow, like I really want to get this out because, one, I know what's causing the pain in the backup, and I'm excited to finally like purge this stuffing and get out, like connect with the world in a different way. And so doesn't work well because you don't have any dexterity at communicating or midwifing that stuff and that part of you out into the world. It needs to be a more patient, methodical, slow process for it to be done in a way that's healthy and I think becomes long lasting. Because if you just, again, if you're at the bar and you go, hey, man, I love you, then your friend's going to go, I've known you for 10 years. You never told me how you're feeling once. Now this, and they're going to have a reaction that's like, probably like it's going to be awkward for them. And then you'll create a self-fulfilling prophecy in your mind because the story you're telling yourself is, oh, I can finally be emotional and everything's going to be okay. And all that worry about being rejected and being seen differently it was all an illusion. And then you go on someone and then they're like, dude, what's up? And then you're like, oh, then it fulfills the prophecy because you go, oh my God, they are reacting negatively. I should have never done this. And then you repress it all again, you know?
100%.
So the emotional microdosing is like, instead of going, you know, I love you, you might be hanging out and you're just like, man, this is like, I'm so happy to be together, dude. This is so fun. And then move on.
Yep.
So you're just letting out a little bit of steam, you know? And maybe if you have a partner where, so I'm going into PR mode here. If you have a partner that is feeling the same thing, maybe you're in the situation, you have a partner and you've had, you know, trouble with your emotions there. You know, you can do the same thing whenever they ask you, you know, how's your day? Instead of being like, well, it's fine, you know, let's do whatever. You can just say something like, yeah, it was pretty stressful today, but I'm really happy to be home with you now. You know?
Yeah.
And it's like, that's remapping and repatterning your emotional expression in the world so that you can test very gently life and reality with letting that sensitive part of yourself out, see that it's safe, see how it's received, and know that you can continue doing that until you feel there's a cadence and kind of an elasticity and a buoyancy to letting that part of yourself out. So that's how I followed that process. And as I was able to really let that wall down, of course, I love when we have like the dumbest realizations, you know, of all time. I have them quite often. I should say the most apparent, you know.
Yeah.
It's sometimes the simplest lessons and ideas that we know are so true. When you finally experience them, you're like, oh yeah. You know, whenever I went through all of that and really locked in and connected my intellect and my emotions, the mind, the heart, I put the wall down, was able to just be who I am, you know, because my goal is to be a full spectrum human. I never really realized that was a part of the goal. I thought I kind of was that, but I was like, oh, right. How could I be a full spectrum human if half of it is gone and blocked off? So I realized after going through all that, like, I'm so much happier. I'm so much more available to share all of the things that I've spent my entire life cultivating, all of the tools to understand myself, the world, perception, what it means to be a good human and do right in this world, how to be available for someone, how to really like mirror and have a shared experience to where you both feel present and meaningful. Any of these things that I spent my entire life learning, I'm like, oh, I can actually give those things to people now.
And receive them.
Yeah, that's a big part of it too, man. Yeah, it's like, if you have time for one short story, I know I feel like I've been talking for about an hour now.
No, this is a podcast where I interview you. You're supposed to talk.
Okay, I just don't want to. I don't want to, just spend too much time in case there's anything else that you want to get onto. Just making sure. Yeah, this a great example of that process that is hilarious is me like never being able to ask for help for anything.
Yeah, I feel that.
And I had, kind of the Zen stick moment where you're sitting there and you're like, oh, what is Zen? What is Zen? When the master finally gets the stick and just smacks you in the face. He's like, it's right there. There it is. That's now. That thing is like, and then you can kind of go, oh, right. There it is. I had one of those with the hypervigilance, hyperindependence thing where when I was in this season of of experience.
God, that was good. That was such a crisp joke. You didn't need any extra words.
I like to be economical with my writing and really pack as much as I can. It's all about tone, timing, patience. No, but when I was in the midst of all like unpacking and doing all this stuff, I was grilling some big tasty Texas steaks. And too much sincerity really starts to get to me after a while. You can only be so sincere for so long. Start feeling gross, I really think let me just put a flag in what I was gonna say, and like I really think that like if someone is too sincere for too long, it really freaks me out. Because I'm like, have you looked around? Like, don't you realize how absurd that like reality and just life is?
Interesting.
And I think that one's ability to understand and perceive the absolute absurdity of existence is often equal to one's ability to hold wisdom at the same time.
For sure.
Because if you don't know the incalculably weird and unknowable quality of reality, which is abstract, which is full of turns, which therefore is inherently hilarious, then you don't realize that flipped on its back is the map of wisdom. Because it's the same map, it's just a different lens.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, how can this be constructive and nurturing versus joyful and fun, So anyway,
because there's definitely a tone, especially if a person is a body worker or a breath, like if their identity is anything with somatics. What I experience is there's like a tone and a cadence and a lack of smiling and a lack of laughing that is like the performance of being embodiedly sincere.
Yes.
Which is just like, God, I just want to, what are you like when no one's watching? And like, where's the goofiness? Like the spiritual people that aren't laughing. It's like, so yeah, I totally feel you.
Those spiritual people that aren't laughing aren't spiritual.
100%. They're performing.
Yeah.
Okay, so you were making some juicy steaks?
Yeah, I was making steaks. I do want to speaking of steaks, I want to season that last sentiment where I think that the people that are trying to be quote unquote spiritual people that don't have humor about it are in a very painful part of their process.
Yeah.
And I hope that they have people around them that help them release and give them the space to release some of that self-seriousness, because that's a state of maximum invulnerability, because they're just petrified with the idea of being seen and not being special. And that's very hard for the ego and for the heart to process, for all of us. Right? But the sooner you realize that you can be seen and be safe and that you're not special, the happier you'll be.
Yeah.
All right, so back to these steaks.
As you seasoned that perfectly. Thank you. Thank you.
Pleasure. I'm glad it was tasty. So yeah, I was cooking these steaks, and what I like to do with my steaks is, I got a nice kind of like outside flat top situation. Put a nice butter on there, get that going at about 500-600 degrees, and then season your beef with just salt and pepper, and then get that sear going. Right? I swear this means this is part of the story.
This is good.
So, taken from a gentleman from Texas that's eaten nothing but steak for 4 decades.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, so I went out, I was working on it, and I had some slides on, and I was just getting fast and loose with the grill because I was trying to just kind of take care. I was tired, I was just like kind of doing it and whatever, and I sort of wasn't paying attention. And I just took one of the steaks and I was going to sear it on there. And I just plopped that sucker onto the flat top on a pool of butter that was 500-600 degrees. It splashed out and went into my slide between the tongue of the slide and my foot. And so the butter was trapped in there and was just burning my foot.
God damn. And
I will say I did exclaim, which normally I'm not an exclaimer, but I exclaimed.
Imagine, that is so funny to feel into, that before you said that, I couldn't imagine you just being like, fuck. And now that I feel into that, I think that's one of my favorite Cory images.
Oh yeah, I definitely was. Yeah, I can't redo it unless we got some butter in us. we could reenact. But yeah, I was definitely not happy. And so I went inside and I was like, fuck, and I took my slide off. And there's like this huge patch of skin on my foot that had risen up immediately. It's like this crazy blister. And I was like, motherfucker. And I told my wife, I was like, I just, burned the shit on myself. And she's like, oh, why don't you sit down and I'll take care of it. And I was like, no,
Dude, I feel this.
And I was like, no, I got this. And I just put my shoe back on.
Oh my God.
And I'm just like, all right. And so I go and I just continue on. And she got up and came in the kitchen and was like, what are you doing? She's like, sit down, like go like clean that or something. And I was like, no, I was like, why am I? And that was just a good moment because especially it was in the midst of all that stuff. And I was like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
And it was just a good moment of a little bit of pain. And it helped click the lights on, and it helped me unwire this lifetime of hyper independence, And so from then on, I've been able to actually ask for things whenever I need them.
I resonate with that so much because, like, there are times, like, if I have, like, had a back spasm or something, it's a thing that comes and goes. Caitlin is always asking, like, trying to entice me to let her give me massages.
Wait, say it again.
She's trying to entice me to allow me to let her give me a massage.
I thought that's where I just want to make sure. Yeah.
And just like you shared in your story, I will decline it before having any awareness of, like, why am I denying the touch of the person I'm going to live with for the rest of my life when I'm in pain? And it's definitely this, like, childhood thing of, like, the only way I can survive this environment is I have to be, I love the way that you put it. I think you said, like, supremely excellent at everything in order for me to feel like my breath, like that I've like paid for my breath, like paid for my existence. And the result of that is just not letting people help me.
Mm-hmm.
And last year, I had this like spontaneous arising of what's called spasmodic dysphonia.
Oh, I thought you were going to say something like some amazing insight. This is
something worse.
Yeah, okay.
But so like this is a condition that Western medicine sees as something that is incurable, lifelong, and has unknown origins. And it's basically when you start to have spontaneous spasms of the vocal cords.
Mm.
And so for a year, I couldn't talk. This was last year. So for a year, I was whispering if I was ever in like, and it hurt to whisper. Like, it was just like, I was, it was tough. But being in that state, like, especially what started to bring me out of it, which is its own story, it really brought me to a place where I started to ask for help. And I like, it's like the wisdom of like, I was so stubborn that like the wisdom of my body was like, we're going to take away the thing that you use as your primary vehicle to like, you know, like the whole like perfect ecosystem of control you articulated. I too have/had that. And it was mediated by using my voice. But because I wasn't giving myself the space to sit and to meditate, it was like the wisdom of my, whatever you want to call this thing in here. I'm cool with the word soul, but it's like, it created the conditions to get me to come to this same place too, which is to ask for help. A curious question, just like for your process, since you've been connecting to this like awareness of the disconnection, has there been any like almost like primordial weeping that has come? Because what I have found is like if we talk about a wall between these two parts of me, there is something about crying when there's not a looping victim story, you know, because like I would say that there's like two types where like there's crying where I'm repeating some sentence that's fundamentally like a lie, like no one loves me or something. And then there's the weeping that has no linguistic content. And it's just this like, and that type of tear, those tears feel like they're the somatic evidence of like something dissolving that used to be like a piece of armor or something. And so I was curious, in this process, has that happened for you, or was it more just like doing the pulsing in the closet?
Well, first off, I'm very glad that your voice came back, man. That's
me too.
It's incredible how the body can just go, like you said, somatically, we'll just go like, all right, this is getting to a point where let's just take away the one thing he needs, you know. It's incredible. And also I have, you know, other curiosities around, as a child, you must have felt like you couldn't speak up and articulate.
For sure.
Yeah. So that's all coming through. Not only if you know, forgive me if for mentioning it, if it's, you're not comfortable with it, but you struggle with a stutter, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Stutter and the vocal cord thing. That's a double dose, man. It's incredible, but it's great that you, and impressive, you're able to notice what's happening and receive that message and process it and actually learn from it and give yourself what you need, you know, as opposed to some people wouldn't do that. You know, again, some people would just deny it and fight through it and clinch so tightly to what they're carrying and their story, you know? So I think it's valuable to share, like, you know, the stuff that we do, like that story that you shared. It's really difficult, man. And it's a really big deal because whenever you're inside of it, it feels like, well, this is day 37 of this. I don't know, I'm trying to, but it's a very harrowing experience. And 90% of people in the world, maybe 95% of people, I don't know, aren't trying to make themselves better. They aren't actively trying to heal themselves, to look inward, to understand where their physical and emotional pains are coming from, and to actualize themselves into a more, aware and potent and I'll say spiritually mature, since I'm talking to you, individual. But, just that short, and I know you've done that a million other ways, but it's worth lingering on and not taking those things lightly.
I appreciate that. And I can tell that I definitely, I have not lingered on it, and I think it was so terrifying, that year of not being able to speak, that once my voice started to come back, is I haven't really looked back in that room of that year.
Yeah.
And this is definitely helping me recognize there's a there.
Totally. And it's the fear and the terror in that year, I imagine, of being what do I do and who am I if I can't talk anymore?
For sure, dude. It was, yeah.
I mean, the only move is to become an eccentric writer that smokes a ton of cigarettes, because you're I'm going to do something with my mouth. You have to deny the authority God thing.
That's funny.
Somehow.
That's so funny.
But anyway, that's amazing, man. And also I think maybe it's probably because I'm just getting older, is that I also think it's viable to say, people who are listening to this who are younger, anything that you do, anything you overcome like that, it's amazing, and it's really important and powerful, and it's something that you should feel good about. And it's not only is it going to make your life better that you confront and go through a hard thing and really listen to what you need and give it to yourself, but also it turns into a receipt. So the next time you face a new problem, you go, this sucks, but look, I did this. I can do it again. Looking back, and then now the next one you go, oh, I overcame 2 challenging things, so I can do a third one. And then it becomes where you don't question if you can deal with what arises. You just go into action,
Wow. And so that question that I asked an hour ago, we come full circle, where I was where did you get the confidence of being able to just learn anything that you need to learn?
Yeah. Well, first off, to go to the previous question, I didn't cry. I haven't done any weeping. I'm
Nice.
just not a crier, man.
Yeah.
I did have my tear duct surgically removed.
That makes so much sense. Yeah.
No, I'm just not a crier. I mean, I think I definitely, my inner life is it's very, very empty. It's very, and not in a bad way. I mean, in a mu way, Japanese way. It's very, very just empty and spacious. And so I would have an arising emotion or thought or whatever it might be, and I would allow myself to feel it, and within, probably sometimes a couple of seconds, maybe a couple of hours at the most extreme case, it just goes on. And I sincerely sit with those things, but I don't generally have the nervous system reactivity of responding to emotional or intellectual issues or stimulus in a physical way, because I think that my brain and my awareness is very, it's so open and gentle with it. It just allows everything to be received, that it would be difficult for there to be a shock to it, where it would bypass all of that and go into my body and make my body react. So I'm not against ugly crying. I just
PR mode. I'm not against tears.
I just didn't happen to do it in that time, or ever in my life. So yeah, going back to the other question about the confidence is, I think being pushed into having to figure things out, and I think that also, I think for someone, listening to this, confidence is something that is built, but it can only be built by putting yourself in the unknown again and again and again.
100.
And because I think I was curious, I naturally put myself into the unknown because I wanted to explore, because I sought to figure things out. And that's one of the interesting things. My last book that came out a couple of years ago, I did like 60 podcasts for it in like a month or 6 weeks, something just crazy. I did a crazy amount of podcasts. And of course, as you can imagine, the entire time that I'm being interviewed for all of these hours and hours and hours, I have this little kind of meta note taker in my brain going, what are the overarching patterns that are arising, with all of these conversations, and what information, insight am I seeing come through? Yeah. Kind of a little subconscious divination, And the thing that kept coming up to me is everyone wants to talk about your story and your pain, and then how did you become a person where you did this thing, and blah, blah, it's the same thing. Classic story. And as I replayed it again and again and again, I just started seeing how what really, I think, saved my life was curiosity. It's just being curious and open, and just from a young age, like I just didn't clinch on to, maybe it's because I, started psychedelics and meditation so young. Yeah. But I think it's just, maybe it's a part of my nature too. But I never really held on tightly to what is. I also think it comes from some of the childhood stuff about like seeing that, oh, this is a prism that's turning. That life is a prism, and nothing is, like really nothing is. Yeah. And so it made it to where like, oh, well, let's just explore what could be and what might be. And so that led me to being really curious. And fortunately, the compassion, the inherent, I also think a lot of my compassion came from observing a ton of pain in the people around me. For sure. And it made me go, God, that's horrible. And I don't want to feel like that. And I don't want other people to feel like that, because I see what it's doing. And so those things fortunately connected. And so my journey has been one of deep, deep compassion and curiosity. It just had to make it through all of that ego armoring and the story of me being this, this person who I thought I was, which was just all protection and armor. Yeah. It's like when they say, when people say protect your peace, it's actually, literal, but you can do it in healthy ways, in unhealthy ways. And most of us are doing it in unhealthy ways.
Yeah. And I think, I'd love to hear your opinion on this, but if you feel like it's a thing that has to be protected, you're probably still in the armor. Yeah. Like if that word feels like that's the thing. Yeah. But I'm seeing the people scamper over there, so it looks like it's about that time. So to close it out, one, let's not take 6 years to have our next interactions. We're hanging out this weekend. But if you could feel into that place in you that gave yourself experiments when you felt like, as soon as you have an insight where there's like a reversal of the frame, you then basically enact an experiment. Can you either playfully or sincerely, or maybe that's the same thing, feel into the person watching this who has resonated with what you have shared? Like Robert Anton Wilson, I invite you to give them an experiment to do.
Yeah, I would say try sharing more of who you are with people that you know than you normally do. And that doesn't necessarily mean being vulnerable. It can mean talk about things that you don't normally talk about with that person. Bring up subjects that you've never talked about. Talk about what you're thinking about at that moment, but you don't normally talk about with this person because they're your music friend, or they're your beer friend, or they're your sports friend. And watch how what you're saying awakens something and makes something available in them that you didn't think was in there. And what will happen is you'll start to see that humans are pretty universally the same complex, rich, deep beings, but that we shave down who other people are in our minds and who we can be in our own lives, because we don't feel that we can exist in certain ways around certain people. But what you'll find is that whenever you start to kind of color outside the lines a little bit, like, this person has all of that in them. They just didn't also know that they could talk about it or feel safe, or that part of their personality could be available with you. When you start talking to people instead of your idea of them, you discover that everyone is going through and feeling exactly what you are. But sometimes you just have to be the one to open the door to connect with someone on that level.
Beautiful. Thank you for coming on The Myths That Make Us, and I appreciate you, and I love you.
Thank you for having me, man. I appreciate you too. I also love you too, buddy.